Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through a Dynasty Fire Sale Rumblings. That's right. So, in our Dynasty Salary Cap and Contract League, we're going to be discussing a team that has made an announcement to the league that they are making all their players available and they are officially providing a fire sale. So we're going to be talking about the top 5 players that we think are interesting, plus a Week 4 recap of the results of how it went in our league. Before we get started, why not, Joe? It's the news hour. We got to be able to talk about some news that's transpired since last week. There's a lot of things that happen in a league, and for especially in a dynasty league, and even more so in a dynasty salary and contract league, because the contracts cause you to be able to make these trades because you can't keep these guys on your roster. There's enforced player movement. So 2 trades went down. One kickstarted the trade. We think it could be a trade frenzy, but it's the fire sale, the rumblings that we're hearing. But before that, Andrew, who was on the podcast last week, did listen to Joe and I's advice, and he made a trade. So we're going to talk first about that to get Joe and I's reaction and for you all to see how it all went down. All right. So Andrew did receive quarterback Daniel Jones. If you remember from before, Andrew had Kyler Murray. He was not satisfied with Kyler Murray. He was concerned about his contract. He really did not have any other quarterback on the roster. So he went ahead and decided to trade for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is now on his roster, and he has a 1-year contract remaining for $6.1 million fully guaranteed. So in return, there was another team involved. 2 teams were really going for Daniel Jones. Mark decided to put him on the block. Maybe he was inspired by us. Maybe he wasn't. But as you can see here, if you are watching this episode, Mark got a decent haul from Andrew, Joe. I'm curious to hear your reaction to this. Andrew ended up giving him a 2026 4th-round pick, a 2027 3rd-round pick, a 2027 5th-round pick, and a 2028 5th-round pick. So 4 picks in exchange for quarterback Daniel Jones. Talked about the contract. Joe, what is your reaction to, I believe, the first trade in the 2026 regular season for our Dynasty Salary Cap and Contract League?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that was definitely the first trade in season that is. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. Andrew taking our advice. There being another team interested as well. Because at first I was like, the fact that he got the 4 picks, and even though they're mid lower round picks in our league, as we have 7 rounds in this league. But I thought it was a decent haul that Mark ended up getting from Andrew to be able to pull this deal off. And I know we had suggested kind of to Andrew maybe picking him up for a 3rd. I believe that was the initial offer by Andrew, but then that other team, pushed in those other auxiliary picks on top of it.
And that's how it all happens, right? You get one other team, and that starts to jack up the price.
Yeah, but honestly, I mean, from Andrew's standpoint, I mean, who cares about those other lower end picks? He's spoiler alert, Andrew is still undefeated. He's 4-0. Now getting Daniel Jones is only going to help him, and he's not, those other picks are kind of meaningless for him. He got the deal done.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, like you said, the fourth round picks can be valuable. 5th-round picks are more of a dart throw.
Yeah.
The 2027 3rd is the crown jewel, so to speak, right? That's what Mark was able to get. I mean, I don't think he could have got a 2nd for him. It's a decent amount of salary. I mean, Mark could have, eaten some of the contract, decided to be able to offload $6.1 million. Andrew actually had to release defensive tackle Vita Vea as a result, and he got scooped up. He got paid quite a bit, 3.5 by Paul. Decided to go get Vita Vea. But anyways, I think a good trade for both parties. Mark signed Daniel Jones and Frazee thinking that he could make an impact. I don't think any of us thought he would make the impact that he has so far. Andrew, on the other hand, doesn't have a backup quarterback and could very well be the starter. And he can choose between the matchups of if he wants to start Kyler or if he wants to start Daniel Jones going forward.
Yeah. Now the next piece will be does Andrew listen to us, and can he find a trade partner for Kyler Murray? I think that'd be the next step. Even though this was the first move and a good one for him to make.
Yeah, that would be interesting if he could kind of start putting that out there to see if he could move Kyler Murray. I'm not so certain that he can, just because of he is pretty expensive unless Andrew was willing to eat some of the contract. But overall, I think my thoughts on this is a fair trade for both sides.
Oh yeah, I thought it was a fair trade, and like you said, made sense for both parties. You got Mark in rebuild mode getting the picks, and then Andrew now going for it, gets his quarterback who's on a 1-year deal here.
All right, so next trade we got here. This is what kickstarted the fire sale rumblings. Adam came out and said he made an announcement. He said, "Hey, I'm making everybody available." So Steve, decided to say, "Hey, I need to go make a trade here." So I went ahead and I acquired safety Grant Delpit of the Cleveland Browns. Grant Delpit's on a 1-year deal, so he's not really a long-term project, or not a project, but he is not signed for long term. So from Adam's sake, if he wasn't planning on re-signing him, doesn't really have much of a future for him. So I've got him now for $4.3 million, 1 year, $4.3 million, 0.7 guaranteed. In return, Adam got some young linebackers that could be helpful for him. So he got linebacker Jaylen Carlees from the Indianapolis Colts. He's on a 3-year rookie deal. He's at a minimum contract for us. And then linebacker Cedric Gray, 3 years and in total $0.5 million over the course of 3 years. Cedric Gray had a really, really good game this past week. If you saw, he had, I believe, 17 total tackles. That Titans team is not all that good. And Adam has been wanting Carlees from me for a while. Him and I have been talking about Carlees probably over a month's time. We finally get a deal done. He is on IR, so for some to say, why would you want him? But, I think when he is healthy, I think he has a real opportunity to be the starting linebacker there next to Zaire Franklin. And we've seen the linebacker next to Zaire Franklin in that Colts defense do fairly well. I know Franklin hasn't been up to the billing that we expect him, usually. But I think overall, I'll be curious your thoughts, Joe. But to me, I think it's a fair trade. I think it makes sense for Adam because he now has two young players, two possibly promising linebackers that could develop on his team, and he's got them under control for 3 years.
Yeah, I definitely think it made sense. If you've been following along on these weekly recaps, you know that Steve has been very unhappy on his defensive side of the ball here. He mentions it every week how disappointed he's been. He thought defense is going to help carry his team, and it's really not done nearly as well as he thought. But he does go ahead and get Grant Delpit here to help that out. And like you said, you have an abundance of linebackers on your roster. You really went in free agency and went for some, lower mid-level interesting linebackers and just added a ton of them, hoping that some of them would pan out. And honestly, a lot of the guys that you did add in the offseason, credit to you there, has hit for you and are doing well. And those guys were expendable. And like you said, a couple of nice pieces for Adam to kind of have on his roster, and hope that they continue to pan out for him as well.
So as we talked about, Adam said, hey, everybody's up for grabs. Now, there were some players, I know Adam said that all players are for grabs, but there are probably some that we think that just based on the contract, that basis how he's got to have some cornerstone players that we're just like, I just don't see him trading. So we're going to be in this segment here, we're going to be talking about 5 players that in our opinion are the most intriguing guys. These are the guys that we think could get moved. And we're going to talk about what we think it would take for them to move. We don't know. We don't have any insider information, to say what Adam would do. This is just our pure speculation of if we had him and looking at his roster, what we would think would be a fair price to be able to acquire these players. So like I said, we're going to talk about 5 players. We're going to be giving you their contract and talk about what we think you could get for them. So not sure, whoever is tuning in here for this episode, if you're into IDP or not. You may be more an offensive-only type of fantasy player. So we're going to start. We have 1 offensive player and 4 defense. So the defense players are far more interesting, but we're going to talk about the 1 offensive player just in case that's what you're here for. So first we got running back Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's on a 1-year contract remaining. He's got $0.5 million in base. So, I mean, it's practically nothing. Now, we did see that Jaylen Warren had a knee injury, that he missed the game against the Vikings. And Kenneth Gainwell did very well in replacing Jaylen Warren. I think that once Jaylen Warren is healthy, he gets thrusted back into the starting role, and Caleb Johnson seems to be an afterthought. But, for Adam, I mean, I don't really know if Jaylen – I mean, they did sign Jaylen Warren to an extension, so you could argue that he could try to re-sign Warren and keep him, and he might be a nice guy to have. So, I don't know if I would extend him at this point. So if what would entice you to trade Warren? Because there's teams that need running backs. I mean, if we showed you everybody's roster, you would see some teams are in dire straits for a running back. I mean, Tim, for example, comes to mind. What do you think moves the needle here? I guess I think it's probably easiest to talk draft capital. I mean, if you got other players in mind, you certainly could say it. But what are your thoughts there, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, being how cheap he is, the fact that he's, last year of his rookie deal, would be a free agent in our league next year. I mean, I think, I don't know, I was thinking in my head, maybe offer like a 4th-round pick for Jaylen Warren and see what happens. If there's other competition, I could see maybe it going to like a 3rd or, maybe a couple of mid-level picks or something like that. But I think a 4 would be for, fair value. And I think for Adam too, I don't know how much it makes sense for him to have Jaylen Warren long-term because he also drafted Caleb Johnson. And I know Caleb Johnson's kind of an afterthought now, but does that change, next year or towards the end of the season once he gets a little bit more experience and maybe he gains some trust from this coaching staff back?
Yeah, what was in my mind when you were talking was a 3rd. I thought was probably good value. I think you could also get away with like a 4th and a 5th, or a 4th and a future 4th or something like that. But I mean, there's no way you can get a 2nd. I mean, I think you'd be nuts to trade a 2nd for Warren. I think that's too much.
I mean, I think you'd have to be really desperate and just, having to need there's got to be some other action, some other teams willing to, go all in on Jaylen Warren, identify him as their guy and willing to pay a hefty price. I mean, not to say it can't happen, but I do think a 2nd-round pick is a bit rich. I think somewhere that 3rd and 4th, round pick is probably the sweet spot, or like you said, maybe it's a 4th and a 5th or something packaged as well.
I also think like a young player plus a late could be good. Maybe not that you would ever do this. I know you own him in the league. He's on your roster. But like Malik Washington in a 4th, right? Something like that, I think could be kind of interesting. He might be getting, more involved in the offense now with Tyreek Hill's injury. So he's young enough a player that, he could be really interesting. So I think something like that also could work. I don't think it has to be purely draft capital, but it's something like that. Nothing crazy, I don't think, for Warren here.
No, that's the main thing. I don't think it's anything crazy. And I think it's just, like you mentioned at the top, easier to kind of float around some draft capital, being that once you talk about players, it's tough to know like who's got who on their rosters and, what makes sense without going in too in depth to everyone else's team in the league.
All right, so next guy, who's the marquee guy, in our opinion, on the defensive side, that's Josh Hines-Allen, defensive end from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Adam decided to re-sign or extend Hines-Allen this past offseason. So it's, he has a pretty big contract. He's 4 years, $106 million, 45 base, 45 guaranteed, 16 million as a signing bonus. On the signing bonus, Adam, because anytime you have a trade, the team that is inheriting the player does not have to pay the signing bonus. The former team does. So Adam will be on the hook, for that, but he's still $22.5 million. That's a lot of money for a team to take. Now he has played 4 games, so it'll actually be a little bit less than that because Adam will have to pay out the weekly amounts there. So I think Adam may have to eat some of this contract because there's not a lot of teams that have the cap space. Not to mention he's at $18.3 million himself anyways. And so at the end of the day, he can only roll over 27.9 in cap space. So there's only so much he could, really gain. If he's over that, it doesn't really do anything for him. The question is, how much for Hines-Allen? He's 28 years old. If you look at the Jaguars contract, if I'm not mistaken, they have I believe he also has a 4-year deal in real life, but after 2 years, there's an opt-out. So I'm going to confirm that right now. But as I do that, Joe, what are your thoughts here? What do you think is fair value for Josh Hines-Allen here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I honestly thought he'd be doing a little bit better this year. I know he's one of the guys that you sent me a tweet over earlier. He's getting a ton of pressures, but not necessarily getting those sack numbers for fantasy. So maybe there are some big games for him to come if he actually turns those pressures into sacks. It is interesting. I do think somebody could possibly give him a first round pick for Allen. I don't think that's out of the question. Maybe I don't know if it's if you'd have to give more than that or not, but I think Adam, I know you mentioned he's not exactly enthused to trade Josh Hines-Allen, so I do think you'd have to be a little bit aggressive to go ahead and get him over that hump to want to trade him. So I think you'd probably, at least have to come in with offering a first round pick.
Yeah, so just to confirm, that is true. So he has 4 years remaining in real life, which I always, want to look into because I think that's important. Yep. And after 2 years, the Jaguars could get out from it. So that is something to consider. Now, I did see that Travon Walker, I think, was on the injury report, and they're saying that he could miss some time. I thought I saw that he had some sort of injury, which I think is important. That does affect the overall pass rush of this team. And right now, if you have a guy like Travon Walker, not all the attention is on Hines-Allen. If Travon Walker now is not in the picture for however length of time, that means that Josh Hines-Allen is going to get, more attention, possibly more double teams. And so could he be, not as productive? I think you're right. I think a first-round pick probably is fair value. I think you could maybe do like a second in like another pick, but I could understand why, Adam would want more for him. He is 28. By the time he could be, removed from the Jaguars, he'll be 30. Pass rushers can play later in their career. It's a tough one for me. I think that if he was performing like we know he's capable of, then I'd say, okay, first round pick, slam dunk. But right now, based on his average of points, you could pick up somebody on the wire and get somebody almost in similar production to him right now, depending on what players, kind of come out of nowhere. I will say, though, like, even if you think about the first round, like, let's say you had a first round pick, and even let's say you decided to draft an edge rusher. You look at this edge rusher class last year, which was, an elite class, right? Abdul Carter. He's been good. He hasn't been as elite as we thought he would be right out of the gate, right? Jaylen Walker, been okay. James Pierce Jr. has shown some flashes. Micah Williams, we haven't seen much of him, right? So you look at the Shamar Stewart for the Bengals, haven't seen much production. So it's like
he's hurt right now, which doesn't help.
Yeah, so it's like if you look at the top guys, and this is a good class, like you could have drafted one of those guys in the first round, and you're not getting that immediate impact. So I can understand why he would want at least a first for him. I'll be curious to know if anybody would be willing to give him a first.
Would you be willing to give him a first? I know he's potentially a guy that you're.
I've considered it. It's something it's on the table. It's just I don't have one this year. I do have a few in 2027. It's just a question of Gregory Rousseau has been very disappointing for me, and do I hold out hope that he turns it around, or do I get Hines-Allen and bench Rousseau? That's kind of the question.
Yeah, that is a question. I guess it. I looked up the Travon Walker injury news. Supposedly he's seeing a wrist specialist, which doesn't sound that great. Doesn't seem like they're expecting it to be a long-term injury, but apparently he is in jeopardy for missing at least this week.
Yeah.
But
So,
I do think if you're going to package, a first and plus, I do think there are some potentially more interesting defensive ends that you could go ahead and target and really get the bang for your buck there. Where Hines-Allen, I do, even though you'd have the potential 4-year contract, which is nice, it's just a question of is he going to kind of live up to that name and produce for you?
well, and it's early yet, right? So we get close to the deadline. More teams say they're out. They're looking to shop their players. This is the first team that's really come out and said, like, hey, everybody's available. So it's like, do you jump at the first crack or do you kind of wait and see, kind of how things progress? So on the next player we've got here is one of your guys, Joe, Denver Bronco, defensive tackle Zack Allen. He received the franchise tag over the offseason. So right now he's at 20.5 guaranteed. Mind you, he's, Adam would have to pay out the first 4 weeks, so it wouldn't be that amount. Zack Allen's on the Broncos. I think he signed you would know, Joe. He signed a contract, I think, was over the offseason, and an extension of some kind. So he's going to be with them for quite some time. Now, Allen is not having the unbelievable year that he had last year. This is more, similar to what we've actually, I mean, if you look at how he's performed so far, yikes. I mean, he's really not performing. The last time he's performed like this was back into like his second year in the league. So yeah, what I mean, I'm gonna let you talk about this because you obviously know way more about the Broncos and about Zack Allen. If this was last year, I think you could maybe get a first round pick out of Zack Allen. This year hasn't been the same. Now he is 28 years old. So, and we know that defensive tackles can play, a long time. And I don't see the defensive scheme changing anytime soon in Denver. So what are your thoughts here for Allen? What do you think is a fair value for him?
Yeah, I mean, if he was producing at the high level he was last year, I think you could get a lot more for him. But maybe you just kind of wait until he gets closer to the deadline. Hope he heats up. I mean, he has had some good team. He had a couple of good games so far against the Titans and Colts, but the last 2 weeks he's just been really non-existent and just only getting a couple tackles. And it's obviously I'm a Broncos fan. Watching the games, you just don't feel that presence that you're used to feeling out of Zack Allen, which has kind of been disappointing so far. But you're not wrong. Like, unless Vance Joseph goes somewhere, maybe even gets a head coaching gig, I mean, the defense should stay the same. He signed a 4-year extension in the offseason with the Broncos. It was for $102 million, nearly $70 million in guarantees there. So that is kind of nice knowing that at least. But I don't know. I mean, I think, defensive tackle is tough. It's hard to find him. I think, he's playing out the franchise tag at the moment, possibly, looking to hit free agency next year. So unless Adam were to not trade him and hit him with the tag again. But I don't think he's going to do that. So I think maybe a second round pick
That's
would
what I think.
Probably be fair.
I just don't see anyone in our league being willing to trade a first round pick for a DT unless it was somebody like huge name value, like a Quinnen Williams, Jeffrey Simmons type. Zack Allen just doesn't bring that same level of name recognition.
No, I mean, I at the deadline last year, I had Calais Campbell, who is averaging way more points than Zack Allen is currently, and I traded him away for a fourth. I mean, I know he's a lot older, and people aren't really interested in retaining him. So I think, obviously the youth of Zack Allen and having him for multiple years definitely should increase that up to a second.
If you were Adam, would you take a second for him? Or would you prefer to just keep him and re-sign him?
Yeah, I mean, he's doing this fire sale to rebuild, so I probably would take the second.
I think it depends on whether you want to retool or rebuild. If you're doing a full rebuild, then it makes sense just to strip it
Yeah.
down to the studs, start over, and we've seen teams do it, and then they can hit the reset button and start over, there could be value in that. Sometimes if you and I don't like staying in the middle, it doesn't do you any
No.
good.
Yeah. The one thing I would say why I might trade him is, was last year just an absolute anomaly for Zack Allen. He played incredible. He hadn't done that his whole career. I know even after the first year that the Broncos had him, I was telling you that I was kind of disappointed with him. And then last year in his contract year, he just absolutely balled out, ended up cashing out with that money, as we'd say. So if he's going to be kind of that player that we had seen earlier, I think I'd trade him away from the second round pick.
All right, so next guy we're going to be talking about here is defensive tackle Zack Sieler of the Miami Dolphins. His contract's interesting. 1 year plus void years. So he's the total contract for this season is $21 million, 8 base, $10 million guaranteed, $3 million signing bonus. He's got 2 void years, which are signing bonus, but Adam would be on the hook for those. So right now $18 million, but last after the 4 games that he'd have to pay out for the weekly paycheck amounts. So when it comes to Sieler is interesting because he's 30 years old, and he's been a very productive player, especially last year. He was phenomenal. He's kind of taken a dip. That defense is, you saw how much the Jets were able to run all over him last Monday night. But I do wonder if a part of the reason why Zack Sieler hasn't been as productive is because Kenneth Grant now is there, and he occupies a lot of space, so maybe he's just not getting those tackle opportunities. But right now, Zack Sieler is only averaging 13.38 points. It's tough. We're used to him scoring a lot more. So I don't know. What are your thoughts as far as Zack Sieler and what you could actually get for him at this point?
Yeah, I like Zack Sieler. I do think he's interesting. Have seen him get back-to-back games with, 5 total tackles, which has, he's had his 2 best games back-to-back so far this season. So maybe, just depending on the different teams that they've played, obviously, Buffalo and the Jets ran the ball quite a bit, so easier to get some tackles there. If he keeps kind of facing those teams, maybe we see that, but just being that he's a couple of years older than Zack Allen and doesn't necessarily have that stability there, I think maybe, third or fourth territory would probably make sense for Sieler.
I was thinking the same thing. You could either maybe do like multiple picks, like a third and a fourth, package a couple picks. But again, not a lot of name recognition for Zack Sieler. I don't think a lot of people know him. He's not a household name. You look at his stats, he's not really producing. People aren't going to want to trade a high draft pick. You could look at Zack Allen and see like how much of a monster he was last year and how, people think of the Denver Bronco defense as being really solid. So I could see where, okay, people are, and he's younger, so people may be more apt to, go with Zack Allen. But with Sieler, I just don't think, I don't know. You could say that Sieler could be even more productive than Allen. I think I'd rather have Allen, though, because here's the thing. I'm more apt to re-sign Allen than I am Sieler. As the team that's acquiring them. Like, sure, I want to win, but then they're a free agent. Do I decide to re-sign them? I think I'm more apt to re-sign Allen than I am Sieler.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. He is a couple of years younger, too, but, he's under contract. Sieler's under contract until 2029. They do have a potential out in 2027. So, it's kind of a similar length that you could get some security with Zack Allen. I just think fantasy-wise in our league, Sieler has actually been more consistent over the last couple of years. Now, the last couple of years, he's had back-to-back seasons with 10 sacks. Currently, he's got 0. So, he's going to have to start turning up those sacks to kind of get there. But you're talking about the last 2 years, he's averaged 20 points a game, and the year before that, 2022, is 17.4. So, he has been a bit more consistent. I know it's been disappointing thus far, but if he does return to that value, I don't know. I think maybe Sieler at a little bit of a discount could make some sense, despite Zack Allen being the bigger name. and on a better overall defense, but maybe just the amount of times that the Dolphins, if their offense sputters, the defense will get more opportunities.
So you feel if it was you and you were a competing team, you would prioritize Sieler over Allen?
Yeah, I think I would, especially if you don't have any interest in kind of re-signing the player. I think I'd rather. I have a bit more confidence in Sieler, just given the more consistent track record.
All right, so last guy we're going to be talking about here is linebacker Zack Baun of the Philadelphia Eagles. And, Baun came out of nowhere last year, was predominantly a special teams player, and, had a fantastic year. Right now, he's on a 3-year contract with Adam, $19.2 million overall, 11.2 base, 5 guaranteed for this season. He's only going to be $5 million guaranteed. Again, the signing bonus, Adam's on the hook for that. And if you move the week 4, through week 4 game checks, it's going to be a little bit less than the $5 million. So very reasonable to get Zack Baun. Zack Baun has not skipped a beat this season with the Eagles. He's doing very well again this season. And if you look at the Eagles and the way they structured their contract, I think he's definitely going to be on. He has 3 years left himself in real life. And I would feel very strongly that he'll be on the team for at least the first 2 years. The third year, I'd say, is like a medium risk that they may decide to get rid of him. But, linebackers can fall off, out of nowhere. So I would say you know for sure that he's going to be there for two more years, 3 years more than likely, but it's a possibility. What would you say is a good value for Zack Baun?
Zack Baun is interesting. Obviously he's, broke out last year, top linebacker. To your point, he's flying around this year, not skipping a beat. It's just, I'm curious. I'd be curious to see what Adam could get for Zack Baun, because our league just doesn't really value the linebacker position, and I don't know how much they will value Baun. I mean, currently he's the LB18 on the season thus far. So, I think probably maximum of a third, but I think probably, like a fourth, or maybe like a fourth and a fifth is probably more realistic.
I was thinking the same thing. It is interesting because when you think of IDP, linebacker's king, but of course with our scoring, we try to make it a little bit more realistic to have it be based off of the position value and what they actually bring to the table. I think if I were Adam and I got a third, I think I would do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I were him, I probably would like a second, but I just think that's too rich. I mean, heck, you could get guys like Mac Wilson and Jack Sanborn and D Winters and guys like those that are scoring more or as much as Baun. And so, unless you're in dire straits at the linebacker position based on injuries or what have you, and usually when a guy goes out, you can typically just go and pick up the replacement. They typically don't miss a beat, because it's a lot of the defensive system, that they may not be very good at football, but they'll, go ahead and then replace the player. So like a Roquan Smith is going to be out. I forgot for how long. So if Teddy Buchanan, now you have him, Joe, or no, Andrew.
Andrew has him. Trenton Simpson.
Yeah. So Buchanan steps in there. Buchanan, I don't know if he'll be Roquan Smith, but I'm sure he'll be very serviceable. So linebacker is a really tough one, but I've also been really burned by linebackers. So I don't know. To me, sometimes like I would almost, I know of this past off season, I changed my ways and it actually worked out that I picked some good ones. But boy, I've been like Junior Colson looks awful. It looks like an awful pick. I think I've made some other bonehead, picks when it and signings when it comes to linebackers. So, Baun's going to be solid for this year and probably next year. So that could be enticing.
Yeah. As long as he's a part of that Vic Fangio style defense, he should be good. So yeah, it's one of those things. I think Adam, ideally, just because of his production last year and, just who he is now, I think he would like to get that second. Based on our league, I just don't think that's going to happen, and how guys just don't really value the linebacker position. To your point, it's it's a lot different with the IDP stuff than offense. Like offensive guy goes down, sometimes that replacement isn't going to be nearly as good just because that starter is so good. But to your point, like especially I feel like at the linebacker positions, because they're just there open for tackles and you get a decent amount of points for a tackle. So it's really more so about the opportunity going up and how they're utilizing the defense, and how they get points versus, the talent level. Obviously, have having a talent level of a guy like Roquan Smith is great, but doesn't mean a guy like you mentioned, Teddy Buchanan, can't step in and give you similar fantasy value.
So those were the 5 players that piqued Joe and I's interest, we think could be on the move, and we're going to keep you up to date here. If we see some moves that happen, look forward to next week's episode or the week after that, because we're going to let you know that what trade happened and give you a breakdown of it. So before we end this episode today, we're going to be going through a rapid fire of our Week 4 recap of our league and referencing our power rankings that we did prior to the start of the season. Boy, Joe, we may have to redo those because we're getting a lot of flack from the league, and we were definitely wrong on a few occasions, and some big swings at it, I'll say as well. It was just really interesting.
Yeah, at the end of the day, league members can be ticked off, but honestly, like we were splitting hairs on a lot of these teams and who's going to go over who. And I mean, it's a deep league. We got a deep amount of rosters, full IDP, the offense of slots that we do. So, they're just hard to protect and hard to separate the teams. So people can get mad all they want. It was tough to come up with this list, but like I've been saying all along, I think at the midway point of our season, we should come up with an updated power rankings, and hopefully some of our league members will be happier with that power ranking list than our original one.
I think we'll have to. So starting off, we talked about Adam. Adam faced me, and he lost. He scored 287.45 compared to my 357.45. So not too close to a matchup. Me power ranked at number 4 and Adam at number 12. Apparently this is what sealed the deal for Adam, that ultimately he decided that it was time to move on here and go on the fire sale. I don't necessarily blame him. If you look at his roster, he just didn't really score. Nothing really. I look at his roster, nothing really stands out. As far as my roster goes, I'm really happy with my offense. My offense is pretty solid across the board, especially now with Tyreek Hill getting injured. Jaylen Waddle now steps up as I think has more opportunities there. Marvin Harrison kind of riding the ship, and seems to be back to at least normalcy when it comes to Marvin Harrison. So I think overall I'm feeling decent about where I'm at with my team at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should, and like we talked about, Delpit should be a nice addition. Safety's been a pretty weak spot for you, so hopefully he brings some stability there. And yeah, this matchup and the 70-point loss for Adam definitely seemed to kind of put him on the brink and spiral into putting his whole team up for the fire sale.
Next, we've got Dan versus Paul. Dan ended up winning this game 360.75 to Paul's 315.7. Dan was our number 3 power ranked team, number 3, and he's 4-0 now, so he's continuing to do very well. Whereas Paul now is 2-2, and we gave him the power ranking of 13. Paul's definitely still in the mix for his division, though. Just with Adam, who's in his division, has decided that he's going on a fire sale. We're going to be talking about Charlie's team a little bit later. But ultimately, tough matchup for Paul. Paul's the offense ultimately, did better than Dan's offense. With Dan, even with the likes of Dan having guys like we talked about, Jamar Chase, Lavacongi, JSN, right? But on the defensive side of the ball, Dan just overpowered him. Almost doubled on his defense. A lot of that because of how well Cooper DeJean and Tyreek Stevenson and Jeffrey Simmons did. But, Paul's taken 2 zeros from his edge rushers. He got 3 points for his D tackle, 1 point for his corner. It's going to be tough to win games like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, that is why we put Paul at 13. We like the talent he had on offense, but I mean, he's just completely really hasn't put much effort into that defense, and we were concerned about it. And it showed up. I mean, I don't, Paul at least will have to consider putting in Uchenna and Wusu from here on out. I mean, he took 2 donuts at the edge rusher position. Meanwhile, he got him 34 points on his bench.
Yikes. Yeah, that's bad. And I wonder if Paul's a team. We talked about his defense, right? And I think it's easier to acquire defense than offense in our league. Will Paul possibly reach out to Adam and possibly acquire some of those defensive players that we were talking about?
Yeah, that seems to be match made in heaven. I mean, Paul has got one of the worst defenses in our league, and Adam's got some interesting guys up there that definitely should happen.
Our next matchup, this was a really tight one. This was Jason going up against Andrew. Jason ended up losing this game, 292.55 to Andrew's 298.3. So he won by less than 6 points. So bravo to Andrew. Andrew is now 4-0. Jason falls down to 1-3 as a heartbreaker. At the end of the day, Andrew has definitely proved us wrong, Joe. He was the number 14 overall power rank team for us versus Jason's number 10. This will be interesting for Jason with Lamar Jackson now getting injured. A lot of guys on bye for him. He does have Matthew Stafford to be able to kind of maintain. But if you look at the difference between the two, we've said Andrew's offense is in rough shape. But his defense can really help him, and that's what happened here. His defense did really well. And with all the injuries happening around the league, it's actually panning out for Andrew quite well because he has Imari Demercado, he's got Kenneth Gainwell, and he's got Rico Dowdler talking about this Chuba Hubbard possibly miss next game with a calf injury. So he's now got these filler running backs in there that he may be able to use. So Andrew's offense might start to get a little bit better. And with Malik Neighbors out for the year, he's got Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson now gets a lot more interesting as well.
Yeah. And, I mean, it would have been interesting. I think had that Steeler game not been in Ireland in such an early start, Andrew probably gets Gainwell in there. It just so happened that Jaylen Warren news broke so late that he, I know Adam took a 0 from Warren as well. So it didn't help him, and obviously didn't help Andrew there either.
Next matchup, which was one of the biggest upsets of the week, we had Charlie going up against Mark. Charlie scored 331.55. He lost this game to Mark at 372.25. Mark was our number 15th power rank team compared to Charlie at number 5. And Charlie's in a world of hurt right now. Charlie's 0-4. He's literally the 15th team right now. Mark is 1-3, and it just doesn't get any easier for Charlie. Tyreek Hill, now he's out for the year now with that gruesome injury that he sustained on Monday night. We talked about Trayvon Walker having that wrist injury. We'll see how long that affects him, but Charlie also has him. DJ Reed, who played really well for him in this game, went on IR. Charlie just can't catch a break right now.
No, he certainly cannot. Yeah, it's going to be really tough sledding for Charlie, and ultimately he's one of the teams that's really proven us, wrong on the power rankings as well, kind of in the negative way, unlike Andrew, who's undefeated here. But yeah, I mean, just how many more weeks does Charlie lose or whatever to be disappointed before all of a sudden we get fire sale from his team?
I think it's got to be close. I mean, he's 0-4. He's now 4 games behind Andrew. I think Andrew's 4-0, but I think he's a weak 4-0, no offense. So I do think that Charlie's team on paper could storm back and possibly take this division. That's his best hope at this point. But down 4 games right now, if he were to take another loss, it's going to be really hard. And now that he lost Tyreek Hill, that doesn't help. He's got TJ Watt on bye. Trayvon Walker now is going to be injured. And let's see, I'm just curious, who does Charlie have in week 5? He's got Jason next week, so that's a winnable game. Jason's got his own things that he's got to deal with. So I don't know. It's a big week for Charlie. Big week.
Yeah. Well, it just is. Another back-breaking thing for Charlie is he actually gets decent amount of points from Michael Penix this week with 44 and still takes the loss. I mean, that's been the one thing holding him back, and he finally gets it and then still takes the L.
Well, the thing that crushed them is Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
And Dak had a phenomenal game. You and I didn't anticipate it, but Mark definitely benefited greatly from it. All right, our next matchup was you, Joe, and I thought that you possibly were going to pull off the upset because Chris and Nolan here, but you did not. They scored 309.7 to your 264.75. With you being the number 16 power ranked team, they are number 7. But I'll be curious to see what happens with Chris and Nolan's team. They're right in the hunt. They're 3-1. You're still 0-4. But they do kind of have some issues on their roster that I'm curious to see how it all shakes out. Obviously, they lost James Conner, from a week ago. Don't really have RJ Harvey did great, but Brian Thomas is, they made a huge trade to get him over the offseason. He's been disappointing. AJ Brown seems to be kind of a disaster right now. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see, does their team continue to perform? I don't know. Are they pretenders or contenders at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of right in the middle, at this point. But if, Brian Thomas Jr. starts picking it up or AJ Brown, picks it back up, I mean, honestly, it's just crazy. I mean, AJ Brown got 9 targets, but only 2 catches for 7 yards. Like that is just mind blowing for a guy that had such a magnificent week against the Rams. But the difference was they had to pass to keep up with the Rams. Where this past week they got up to a lead against the Bucks and really didn't have to do too much after that.
It's just crazy to me that if you look at his offense compared to their offense compared to yours, you outscored them. I mean, that's just this is remarkable. But a lot of it was due to Drake May, and I'm having to think that you're feeling very, very good about that trade that you made in the offseason.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Drake May is a guy I was high on. Really, really liked his situation with the Patriots and really thought he could improve, especially with them getting Vrabel and McDaniels over there. I felt like that was going to help him. And sure enough, so far, May looks the part and was what I was expecting. So, of course, I am happy to have him to build around.
Yeah, instead of J.J. McCarthy, who you possibly could have. Bo Nix would have been probably as good, but would have had to pay up more.
Yeah, Paul wanted a lot.
Our next matchup here, we got Aaron. He beat Josh. He had 398.95, which I believe was the highest score of the week. And then Josh got 343.5, which is brutal because Josh scored a ton of points. Josh, our number 6 power ranked team versus Aaron, number 9. Ultimately, what sealed the deal, and I remember Josh messaging me saying, how is this even possible? But Tuli Toipolotu had 4 sacks, a forced fumble, 7 solo, 5 tackle for loss, 3 assisted, 5 QB hits, and he scored unbelievable in our league. And ultimately, that was the thing that changed the game because even, Josh did really well. His offense scored really well. Patrick Mahomes had a great game for him. You would have thought that on paper, if you looked at, Josh's roster, you would have said, hey, yeah, Josh is going to win this week. But the Tuli Toipolotu factor really changed everything.
Yeah, I mean that, and like you said, I mean that is literally what cinched it. I mean, Josh's offense outscores Aaron, and then you take away some points from Tui Pelotu, and defenses are a lot closer. And honestly, Josh probably wins it. A tough loss, but honestly, that's why we say edge rushers put emphasis in them because they can be game wreckers and game changers. And why when we look to these teams, teams that have the edge rushers, we give an edge to, and Tui Pelotu showed why.
Our next matchup here, we got Tim versus John. John ended up winning this game 312.8 to 292.05 for Tim. It was definitely a close one. Tim, our 11th power ranked team versus John, number 8. Ultimately, Tim, his offense is it's too thin, and I think that's a part of the reason why we struggled with Tim's team in the beginning, and it's only gotten worse. With Najee Harris going put on IR, Mike Evans being injured as well. Tim really needs some reinforcements here. I think Tim, has a good team. I think he could figure it out, but I don't know. He's kind of in a tough spot right now. He's 2-2. He's right in the middle of the pack. If the season were to end today, he would make the playoffs. So I don't know. I don't know where Tim goes from here.
Problem is, Tim's always kind of just like to ride the middle. But if at one of these points, if he wants to be serious, like hit up Mark, see what he wants for a guy like Travis Etienne. Now Adams got, guys like Tony Pollard or Jaylen Warren who could also be up for grabs. So if he's serious about competing, I mean, he cannot continue to start Hassan Haskins and Brian Robinson Jr. at running back when there's other teams that have, guys potentially available that you can go and trade for. So if he ever wants to just get out of this, ride the middle, hope you make the playoffs every year and actually wants to compete, he's got to get on the phone here.
Well, the other thing too is, and I just looked too, I mean, with Roquan Smith, again, I don't know how long his injury is, but he doesn't really have a linebacker as a backup. Buchanan's already gone. Simpson's already gone. So I don't even know how he replaces the linebacker. So in my mind, he's got to get on the horn. Maybe he can get Zack Baun. Even a guy like, we didn't talk about it for Mark, but a guy like Jordan Brooks, who's on a 1-year deal, who's doing phenomenal. Getting someone like him, you really got to, I think Tim's in a position where he's like, I don't know. To me, I don't like right in the middle. Either you got to start trading for people or starting to trade.
I don't either, but Tim does. He's always talked about he doesn't care, if as long as he can kind of be a playoff team, he's happy. But I would think at some point he'd want to go for it. And, and honestly, he's had another big loss on defense with Ed Oliver being out as well. But when he comes back, I mean, that's the thing. He's got to get some reinforcements. So when Ed Oliver comes back, he can take advantage of that.
All right, and lastly, we've got Jake versus Tom. Jake ended up winning this game. He's our number 1 power rank team, 389.3 to Tom, our number 2 power rank team. So this is a heavyweight match, 350.7. This was the championship rematch from the year before. And it's interesting. I mean, Jake, this is the power of Jake's team, right? I mean, you saw Brian Branch had a phenomenal game. Aiden Hutchinson had a phenomenal game. And this is even with Malik Neighbors in his starting lineup. But, I'll be curious to see how this affects Jake, because now he just lost Neighbors for the year. He's lost Bosa for the year. Bucky Irving now could miss some time. Nate Wiggins, who's a starting corner, sounds like I think he might be out for the year. So I don't know. Jake he's getting riddled by the injury bug. And then for Tom's team, Tom is in such a stiff division. Carson Wentz ended up actually performing well for him. But, what does he do here? I don't know. These two teams are very interesting because right now they were number 1 and number 2 in our power rankings. And the season we're in today, neither of them make the playoffs.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, Jake offensively, I don't really worry about. I mean, he's got plenty of depth on the offensive side to kind of weather that storm. And, even with a guy like Nate Wiggins, he can replace him. I wouldn't, I think Jake is still okay. Just got to start, he's going to have to quarterback though. That's going to still be the question mark. I know Trevor Lawrence finally had a decent game at 29.9. Ironically enough, Stroud.
I definitely would have Stroud.
Well, Carson Wentz outscored him. And then CJ Stroud this week also outscored him. But that's the thing. I mean, flip a coin to see who's going to score more points, Lawrence or Stroud.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our Dynasty Fire Sale Rumblings. This is our salary and contract league. And if you've never done one before, or if you've always thought it was interesting but never knew where to go or to try it, this is what we're here for. This is what we enjoy. And so, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can leave a comment below or reach out to us on X. I'm happy to be able to assist however we can. Because it really is. Once you start playing in this format, it ratchets up the strategy. It ratchets up the fun, honestly. So we couldn't recommend it more. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode. We went through our Week 5 trade targets. Joe and I provided one each that you should go out and get. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.